The transport shuttle landed on Catha Station with a loud hiss. Steam poured from its engines as the doors slowly opened. Commander Vel Rix stood at the front of the welcoming party. Her beautiful feathers shimmered in the station's artificial light. Behind her stood dozens of alien officers from different species. They had all gathered to see the new arrival. A single figure stepped out of the shuttle. Elena Vance was not what anyone expected. She was a human woman of average height with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot. Her uniform was simple gray fabric. She carried one bag over her shoulder. That was all. Velrix heard laughter behind her. The sound came from Sub-Commander Thrin. He was a tall insectoid creature with sharp mandibles and 4 arms. His species, the Keleth, were known for their strength and their cruel sense of humor. This is what Earth sends us? Thrin clicked his mandibles together. One small mammal with no claws? No armor? No weapons on her body? Other officers joined in the quiet mockery. The Morin delegation, peaceful creatures made of living crystal, tilted their heads in confusion. The Calorie Scouts, fast predators with 6 legs, circled the human with obvious amusement. Elena Vance ignored all of them. She walked forward with steady steps. Her eyes moved across the crowd, looking at each alien species. She did not seem afraid. She did not seem impressed. She simply observed. Velrix stepped forward to greet her. The commander was from the Aurelian race. Her people looked like tall birds with arms instead of wings. Their feathers could show emotion through color and movement. Right now, her feathers were flat with polite neutrality. "Sergeant Major Vance," Velrix said. "Welcome to Ketha Station. I am Commander Velrix of the Aurelian Concord. You have been sent to help us fight the Vectari Dominion." The human woman nodded. "Thank you, Commander. I have read your reports. The Vectari have pushed your forces back for 3 years. You have lost 12 planets. Your defensive lines are failing." Silence fell over the crowd. No one spoke so directly to Commander Velrix. Thrin stepped forward, his forearms crossed over his chest. "You understand nothing, human. The Vectari are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. They feel no pain. They know no fear. They have conquered 100 species before us." "Yes," Vance said simply. "I read that too. Then you understand why your presence here is almost insulting." Thrin leaned down toward her. He was twice her height. "Earth is new to the galactic community. Your species has only been in space for 200 years. What can one soft human do against an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations?" Vance looked up at him. Her face showed no emotion. "I guess we will find out." She walked past him toward the command building. Her boots made soft sounds on the metal floor. Everyone watched her go. "Interesting," said Kelthan, one of the Calorie Scouts. His crystalline eyes flickered with curiosity. "She does not react like prey." "Because she is stupid," Thrin replied. "Too stupid to know she should be afraid." Commander Velrix said nothing. She watched the human disappear into the building. Something about Elena Vance bothered her. The woman moved like someone who had seen war before. Many wars dot over the next few days. Vance attended all the military briefings. She sat in the back and listened. She asked questions that annoyed the senior officers. Why did they always retreat when the Vectari advanced? Why did they never attack at night? Why did they give up territory so easily? "We retreat because the Vectari cannot be stopped," one general explained with obvious frustration. "Every species that has tried to hold ground against them has been destroyed." "But you have never tried different tactics," Vance said. "What tactics?" "The Vectari are physically superior. Their weapons are stronger. Their armor is thicker. They do not need food or water for weeks. They do not sleep. What tactics can overcome that?" Vance was quiet for a moment. "On Earth," she said slowly, "we have a saying. It is not the size of the dog in the fight. It is the size of the fight in the dog. No one understood what she meant. The human began her own training routine. Every morning, she woke before the station's artificial dawn. She ran around the outer ring of the station. 10 kilometers. Then 20. Sometimes 30. The aliens watched her with amazement and confusion. The Kalori could run faster than any human, but they could only sprint for short distances before getting tired. Vance was slow, but she never stopped. Hour after hour, she kept moving. Why does she do this? A young Aurelian soldier asked. Exercise, his friend replied. Humans must exercise or their bodies become weak. How strange. How inefficient. The human also lifted heavy objects. She pushed her body against walls. She jumped and climbed and crawled through spaces meant for maintenance robots. She did this for hours every day, thought the sweat that poured from her skin disgusted many aliens. They had never seen a creature that leaked water to cool itself. It seemed primitive and gross. Deathworlder biology, one scientist explained during a meal. Earth is a terrible planet. The gravity is crushing. The temperature changes constantly. The air is full of oxygen, almost explosive. Everything on that planet is trying to kill everything else. Humans evolved to survive by adapting. That sweating helps them regulate body temperature. But surely that makes them weak, Thrin said. They have no natural weapons. No armor. No venom. Actually, the scientist said carefully, humans are surprisingly durable. Their bones heal after breaking. Their bodies can function even with severe damage. They can eat almost anything. And their endurance is remarkable. Remarkable for primitives, perhaps. The mockery of Elena Vance continued. Soldiers made jokes about her. Officers questioned why Earth had sent only one representative. Everyone assumed she would break under the stress of real combat. Vance heard all the whispers and saw all the looks. She did not react. She simply continued her training. She studied the maps and battle reports. She learned about the VEKTARI dot at night. Alone in her small room, she looked at photographs she kept in her bag. Pictures of Earth, pictures of family, pictures of soldiers she had served with, many of them now dead. She had fought in wars before. She knew what was coming. The aliens thought they understood warfare because they had fought the Vectari for 3 years. They knew nothing. They had never experienced total war. They had never been pushed to the absolute limit of survival. But they would learn. Elena Vance closed her eyes and slept. Tomorrow she would train again. And the day after that. And every day until the Vectari came. When they did, she would be ready. And the aliens who laughed at her would finally understand what a Deathworlder could do. 3 weeks passed on Ketha Station. Elena Vance became a familiar sight to everyone. Every morning she ran. Every afternoon she trained. Every evening she studied battle reports and maps. The aliens watched her with a mixture of confusion and amusement. One hot afternoon, Vance was running her usual route around the station's outer ring. The artificial sun was at its strongest. Most species had retreated indoors to escape the heat. But Vance kept running. Thrin watched her from an observation window. His mandibles clicked with annoyance. She is trying to prove something. It is pathetic. Keltham stood beside him. The Kalori scout's 6 legs shifted with nervous energy. Perhaps, but I have them watching her for weeks now. She never stops, so? The Morin can meditate for months without moving. That does not make them warriors. It is different. Kelthon's crystalline eyes tracked the human as she completed another lap. When I run, I sprint until my energy runs out. Then I must rest for hours. She moves slowly, but she never needs to rest. I have seen her run for 6 hours without stopping. A waste of time, Thrin said. Speed wins battles, not whatever this is. That evening, Kelthon found Vance in the station's small recreation area. She was sitting alone, eating something from a metal container. The food looked unpleasant. Gray paste with chunks of protein mixed in. May I join you? Kelthon asked. Vance looked up. Of course. The Kelori lowered himself onto a seat across from her. His 6 legs folded neatly beneath him. I have a question about your training. Ask, why do you run so slowly? I have seen your species compete in athletic events. Humans can sprint quite fast when they want to. But you never sprint. You just continue. Vance took another bite of her food. She chewed slowly before answering. Have you ever heard of persistence hunting? No. On Earth, before we had technology, humans were not the strongest animals. We were not the fastest. We had no claws or fangs or venom. But we had 2 things other animals did not have. She held up one finger. First, we could sweat. Our bodies could cool themselves, even in hot weather. Second, we could think and plan and be patient. I do not understand how this helps in hunting. Imagine a deer, Vance said. Beautiful animal, fast, can run much faster than any human. If a human tried to chase a deer and catch it, the deer would escape easily, of course. But what if the human did not try to catch it? What if the human just followed it? The deer runs away. The human walks after it. The deer stops to rest. The human keeps walking. The deer gets scared and runs again. The human keeps walking, hour after hour, day after day. Kelthon's eyes flickered. The deer would eventually get tired. More than tired. The deer cannot sweat like humans. It overheats. Its muscles fail. Its heart gives out. And the human just walks up to it and kills it. Vance finished her meal and set down the container. My ancestors did not survive by being faster or stronger. They survived by being the thing that never stopped following. A cold feeling spread through Kelthon's body. That is disturbing. Yes, humans are disturbing creatures when you understand us. Vance smiled, but her eyes were hard. The Vectari think they are the ultimate predators. They have never met a species that simply refuses to stop. You think you can outlast the Vectari? I think the Vectari have never faced a real predator. They have only faced prey that runs away. What happens when the prey turns around and starts hunting them? Kelthon had no answer. The conversation spread through the station. Other aliens began watching Vance with new eyes. She was still a joke to many of them. But some started to feel something they had never felt before when looking at a human. Fear. Commander Velrix called a meeting of senior officers. The topic was the human liaison. She is disrupting morale, Turin complained. The soldiers are nervous around her. She makes them uncomfortable. She makes you uncomfortable, Velrix corrected. Yes, and that bothers me. Why should I be afraid of a creature I could kill with one arm? Velrix had been reading files about Earth. She had learned things that kept her awake at night. Do you know how humans became the dominant species on their planet? Technology, obviously. Tools and weapons. Before technology. Millions of years before. Humans were prey animals. Small and weak in a world full of predators. But they did something no prey animal had ever done. They started hunting their predators. Thrin's mandibles stopped clicking. That is not possible. Prey does not hunt predators. Humans did. They formed groups. They used rocks and sticks and fire. They hunted the great cats and bears and wolves that hunted them. They drove many predator species to extinction. Not because they were stronger. Because they refused to accept being prey. Madness. Perhaps. But effective madness. Velrix looked around the room. We have been fighting the Vectari for 3 years. We have always fought defensively. We retreat when they advance. We surrender territory when they push. We fight like prey. Because we are prey, one general said quietly. Against the Vectari, everyone is prey. Perhaps Sergeant Major Vance has a different perspective. The meeting ended without resolution. But seeds of doubt had been planted. Days later, Vance requested permission to join a ground patrol on the nearby moon of Ketha 3. It was a dangerous mission. Vectari scouts had been spotted in the area. Absolutely not, Trin said. You have no armor. No enhanced senses. You would be a liability. I have fought in wars before, Sub-Commander. Many wars. I know how to handle myself in combat. Human wars. With human enemies. The Vectari are not humans. No, they are just another predator that thinks it cannot be beaten. Vance's voice was calm. I have faced predators before. I am still here. Commander Velrix overruled Thrin's objection. Vance joined the patrol. The mission lasted 2 days. Nothing happened. No Vectari were encountered. But the soldiers who patrolled with Vance came back different. They had watched her move through dangerous terrain without hesitation. They had seen her keep watch for 8 hours, straight without complaining. They had noticed that she slept lightly, waking at the smallest sound. She moved like a hunter, one Aurelian soldier told his friends. Not like prey pretending to be brave. Like a real hunter who was comfortable in the killing ground. The laughter about Elena Vance began to quiet. A week later, the station received troubling news. Vectari forces were gathering on the edge of the system. A major assault was coming. The coalition forces prepared for defense. Vance attended every planning meeting. She listened and asked her strange questions. Why always defense? Why never attack? Why assume the Vectari could not be beaten? Because they cannot be beaten. Thrin finally shouted at her. How many times must we explain this? The Vectari feel no pain. They know no fear. They fight until they win or die. Vance nodded slowly. So do humans. The room fell silent. You have fought defensively for 3 years, Vance continued. You have lost constantly. Maybe it is time to try something different. Maybe it is time to show the Vectari what they look like from the other side. You are insane, Thrin said. Probably, Vance stood up. But I am also still alive. After everything I have been through on Earth and beyond, I am still alive. How many species can say that about the Vectari? No one had an answer. The assault was coming. Soon everyone would see what Elena Vance was truly capable of, and some of them were no longer laughing. The attack came at midnight. Elena Vance was sleeping in her small room when the first explosions shook Ketha Station. She was on her feet in seconds, pulling on her boots and grabbing her weapons. Years of training had made this response automatic. Red lights flashed in the corridors. Alarms screamed. Soldiers ran in every direction, many of them confused and afraid. Vance moved against the flow of bodies toward the command center. She had studied the station's layout carefully. She knew exactly where to go. Commander Velrix was already there when Vance arrived. The Aurelian commander was shouting orders into her communicator. Her feathers were standing straight up in alarm. Report, Vance said calmly. Velrix looked at her with wild eyes. The Vectari. They came from nowhere. Hundreds of assault craft. They have breached the outer defenses. Ground forces are landing now. Where is Sub-Commander Thrin? Forward base Arum. On the surface. Velrix's voice cracked. We are losing everything. Vance looked at the tactical display. It was chaos. Red markers showing Vectari forces were spreading across the map. Blue markers showing coalition forces were disappearing or retreating. Give me a shuttle, Vance said. I am going to the surface. That is suicide. The Vectari are. I know what they are. Vance checked her rifle. I have fought worse. Nothing is worse than the Vectari. Vance looked at the commander with eyes that had seen things Velrix could never imagine. On Earth, I fought in the Pacific Uprising. 3 years of jungle warfare against enemies who would torture prisoners to death slowly. I fought in the Arctic War. 6 months of fighting in temperatures so cold your fingers turned black and fell off. I fought in the urban collapse. Street-to-street combat in cities of 20 million people. She loaded a fresh magazine into her weapon. The Vectari are just another enemy. Bigger than most. Harder to kill than most. But just another enemy. Velrix stared at her. You are truly insane. Maybe. But I'm also very good at staying alive. Vance headed for the shuttle bay. Keep your forces together. Do not let them scatter. I will see what I can do on the surface. The shuttle ride down was rough. Vectari fighters filled the sky. The pilot, a nervous young Aurelian, dodged and weaved between explosions. We are not going to make it, he said, his voice high with fear. We will make it, Vance replied. She was checking her equipment with steady hands. Rifle, sidearm, knife, medical kit, ammunition. Just get me close to forward base Orm. The base is overrun. Good. That means I will not have trouble finding targets. They crash-landed 1/2 kilometer from the base. The shuttle's engines were on fire. Vance kicked open the door and pulled the injured pilot out of his seat. Can you walk? She asked. I think so. Then walk that way. She pointed toward a distant ridge. There should be evacuation points. Do not stop until you reach them. What about you? Vance looked toward forward base Orem. Fires burned everywhere. The sounds of battle echoed across the rocky terrain. I have work to do. She ran toward the flames. The scene at forward base Orem was worse than the tactical display had shown. Vectari warriors moved through the ruins, killing everything they found. Coalition soldiers lay dead or dying. Some had tried to fight. Most had simply tried to run. Vance found cover behind a collapsed wall. She watched the enemy move. The Vectari were terrifying. She understood now why the coalition forces were so afraid. Each warrior stood 3 meters tall. Their bodies were covered in biometallic armor that seemed to grow from their skin. Their arms ended in weapon grafts. Some had plasma cannons. Others had molecular acid sprayers. A few had massive blades that could cut through steel. They moved with perfect coordination. No wasted motion. No hesitation. They were killing machines designed by evolution and technology to be unstoppable. Vance raised her rifle and shot one in the head. The kinetic round punched through the warrior's eye socket. The Vectari dropped without a sound. Its companions turned toward the sound of the gunfire. They saw a small human standing in the ruins. They detected no fear hormones. No flight response. Just a creature with a primitive weapon looking at them. They charged. Vance moved. She did not run away. She ran toward them, sliding under the first warrior's plasma blast and firing up into its throat. She rolled to the side as acid splashed where she had been. Her knife came out and found the gap between armor plates on another warrior's leg. One of them grabbed her arm. She felt the bone crack. The pain was immense. She screamed and shot the warrior in the face with her sidearm. It fell backward, and she fell with it, then rolled away before the others could reach her. Her arm hung wrong. Dislocated shoulder. Broken radius. She could not use her rifle anymore. She switched the sidearm to her other hand and kept fighting. More Vectari came. She killed them. More came. She killed them too. Her sidearm ran empty. She picked up a metal bar from the rubble and used that instead. A Vectari blade caught her across the back. She felt her skin split open. She felt blood pour down her spine. She turned and drove the metal bar through the warrior's neck joint with strength that should have been impossible. "Why won't you die?" A Victari voice synthesized through its communicator. "Why won't you fall?" Vance laughed. It was not a happy sound. "I'm human. We do not know how to stay down." She kept fighting. Somewhere in the chaos, Coalition soldiers who had been hiding saw what was happening. They saw this small, broken, bleeding human standing against the Victari tide. They saw her refuse to die even as her body was destroyed. And something changed in them. An Aurelian soldier picked up his weapon. Then another. Then a Kalori scout who had been pretending to be dead. Then a Moran engineer who had never fought in his life. They joined the human. The battle for Forward Base Arm was not over. But for the first time, the Coalition forces were not running. They were fighting. And at the center of it all, covered in her own blood and the blood of her enemies, Elena Vance kept swinging her metal bar and screaming words that no translator could process. She was a monster from a Deathworld. And the Victari were learning what that meant. The sun was rising over Forward Base Orm. The battle had lasted all night. Elena Vance was still standing. She should not have been standing. Her left arm was broken in 2 places. Her right shoulder was dislocated. A Victari blade had cut a deep wound across her back that needed immediate medical attention. She had burns on her legs from plasma fire. One of her eyes was swollen shut from a blow to the head. But she was standing. Around her, the Coalition forces had formed a defensive line. They had stopped retreating. For the first time in 3 years of war, they were holding their ground against the Victari. More importantly, they were winning. The Victari assault had broken like waves against a rock. The warriors who had seemed unstoppable were dying. Their bodies littered the ruins of the base. Their command signals had become confused and desperate. Sub-Commander Thrin limped up to Vance. He had survived the initial attack by hiding under collapsed scaffolding. He was uninjured but covered in dust and shame. "How?" he asked. "How are you still alive?" Vance turned to look at him. Her one good eye was empty and cold. "Stubbornness. That is not an answer. It is the only answer I have." Vance swayed slightly. She caught herself on a piece of rubble. "Where's Commander Velrix?" "Here." The commander approached from the rear lines. She moved carefully, one wing hanging at a bad angle. She had come down from the station during the night to help coordinate the defense. "Sergeant Major," Velrix said, "you need medical attention. Later. Are the Victari retreating?" "Yes. Their assault forces are pulling back to their landing craft." Velrix's feathers rippled with disbelief. "I have never seen the Victari retreat. In 3 years of war, I have never seen them take a single step backward." Vance nodded slowly. "They will be back. This was just a probe. They wanted to test our defenses." "A probe?" "They attacked with 300 warriors. And they lost most of them." Vance pointed toward the distant Victari ships with her good hand. "They are confused right now. Their commanders did not expect this much resistance. They did not expect to lose." "Because of you," Thrin said quietly. His voice held something it had never held before when speaking to the human. "Respect." Vance shook her head. "Not because of me. Because of everyone who decided to fight instead of run." She looked at the Coalition soldiers around her. Aurelians with singed feathers. Kalori with broken legs. Moran with cracked crystalline bodies. They could have kept running. They chose not to. "You inspired them," Velrix said. "I just showed them what was possible. They did the rest." A medic finally reached Vance and began treating her wounds. She sat down on a piece of broken wall and let them work. The pain was incredible. She did not show it. "The Victari will return with more forces," Velrix said. "Many more. They will not make the same mistake twice. No, they will not." Vance winced as the medic reset her shoulder. We need to attack before they can regroup. Attack? Thrin's mandibles clicked in shock. Attack the Vectari? Impossible. Why impossible? They bleed. They die. I watched them die all night. They are not gods. They are not unstoppable. They are just soldiers who have never faced an enemy willing to match their ferocity. Velrix was quiet for a long moment. She looked at the battlefield. She looked at the dead Vectari warriors. She looked at the small human woman who had killed so many of them with nothing but primitive weapons and an unbreakable will. What do you suggest? The commander asked. We hit them now, while they are confused, while their commanders are trying to understand what went wrong. Vance stood up despite the medic's protests. We take the fight to them. We show them what it feels like to be hunted. Our forces are exhausted. We lost many soldiers. The Vectari lost more, and they have never lost before. They do not know how to handle losing. That is their weakness. They have been predators for so long they have forgotten what fear feels like. Thrin stepped forward. I will lead a strike team. If what you say is true, we can catch them off guard. Vance looked at him. You believe me now? The sub-commander's forearms shifted uncomfortably. I believe what I saw. I saw you fight. I saw you refuse to die. I saw the Vectari falter for the first time in my life. He stood straighter. If a human can do this, so can I. Within hours, the counterattack was organized. Coalition forces moved out from forward base Orm toward the Vectari landing zone. They were outnumbered. They were wounded. They were exhausted, but they were not afraid anymore. Elena Vance could not join the assault. Her injuries were too severe. She had to remain behind for medical treatment. But she watched the coalition forces advance with something like pride. You changed them, Velrix said, standing beside her. They changed themselves. I just showed them it was possible. Vance closed her eyes. The Vectari have been the top predators in this galaxy for 10,000 years. They have forgotten what it feels like to be prey. Today, they remembered. In the distance, the sounds of battle erupted again. But this time, the coalition forces were the attackers. This time, the Vectari were the ones fighting defensively. The war was not over. But something had shifted. Something fundamental had changed. The prey had become predators, and Elena Vance allowed herself a small smile before the pain medication finally pulled her into sleep. 1 month later, the war ended. Not with a surrender. Not with a treaty. The Vectari did not believe in such things. The war ended because the Vectari were broken. After the counterattack at forward base Orm, the coalition forces kept pushing. They attacked Vectari positions across the sector. They hit supply lines. They destroyed communication relays. They struck at night when the Vectari sensors were weakest. They fought like humans. The Vectari commanders could not adapt. Their entire military doctrine was based on being the unstoppable force. They had no strategies for when the enemy refused to run. They had no tactics for when the prey became predators. One by one, their positions fell. Their warriors, who had never known defeat, began to hesitate. Hesitation became fear. Fear became panic. The final battle took place on the Vectari homeworld. Elena Vance was there, fully healed after weeks of recovery. She led a battalion of coalition soldiers into the capital city. Beside her walked Commander Velrix, Sub-Commander Thrin, Envoy Kelthan, and hundreds of warriors from a dozen species. They had all changed. The experience of fighting alongside a human had transformed them. They no longer thought of themselves as prey. They moved like predators. They thought like predators. The Vectari Supreme Commander waited for them in the central fortress. He was the largest Vectari anyone had ever seen. 4 meters tall, with weapons grafted to every limb. He had led his people for 300 years. He had conquered 100 worlds. He had never lost. "Human," he said when Vance entered his chamber. His translator gave his voice a metallic growl. "You have destroyed everything we built." Vance stood before him without fear. "You started this war. You attacked innocent species. You conquered and enslaved. You thought you were untouchable. We were untouchable. Until you came." The Supreme Commander's weapon arms twitched. "What are you? How can a species so small and weak create such destruction?" "We are not weak," Vance said. "We are different. On our world, everything tried to kill us. The weather tried to kill us. The animals tried to kill us. Disease and famine and disaster tried to kill us. But we survived. We always survived." She stepped closer to the massive alien warrior. She had to crane her neck to look at him. "You want to know our secret? We are too stubborn to know when to quit. We are too angry to accept defeat. We are too crazy to understand that we should be afraid." Her voice was quiet, but it filled the chamber. "Every species you conquered gave up when things got hard. They ran when you chased them. They surrendered when you hurt them. But humans do not do that. Humans get angry. And angry humans are the most dangerous things in the universe." The Supreme Commander was silent for a long moment. Then he did something no one expected. He bowed his head. "We surrender," he said. "This war is over." The Coalition soldiers could not believe it. The Victari had never surrendered. In 10,000 years of warfare, they had always fought to the last warrior. "Why?" Velrix asked, stepping forward. "Why surrender now?" The Supreme Commander looked at the small human woman standing before him. "Because I finally understand. We thought we were predators. We thought the galaxy was full of prey waiting to be conquered. But we were wrong." He gestured toward Vance with one massive arm. "We were never the top predators. We just had not met the real ones yet. Now we have. And we are not stupid enough to keep fighting a war we cannot win." The surrender was accepted. The Victari Dominion was dissolved. Their conquered territories were freed. Their military was dismantled. A new era of peace began in that sector of the galaxy. 1 week after the surrender, Commander Velrix found Elena Vance packing her bag in her quarters on Ketha Station. "You are leaving?" Velrix asked. "My job here is done. Earth is recalling me." Vance folded her uniform neatly. "Other conflicts need attention. Will you come back?" Vance paused. She looked around the small room that had been her home for months. "Maybe. The galaxy is a big place. Plenty of problems to solve." Velrix was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "When you first arrived, we laughed at you. We thought you were weak and pathetic. We thought one human could not possibly make a difference. I remember. We were fools." Velrix's feathers rippled with emotion. "You taught us something important. Not how to fight. We knew how to fight. You taught us that being strong is not about size or weapons or armor. It is about never giving up, never accepting defeat." Vance smiled. It was a real smile this time, warm and genuine. "That is the human way. We do not have